So those of you that have been around long enough will know that I absolutely love the Sony RX100 series, probably my favourite series of camera ever. But what if we took the RX100 series and stuck it in a phone? This is the Sony Experia Pro-i. 1-inch sensor, exactly the same as in the RX100 series. We've got phase detect, real-time eye tracking, autofocus, 4K 120. I've lived to see the day, mate. Phones are taking over. I'm out of a job. I'm off. So the Sony Experia Pro-i, Sony asked me if I wanted to partner with them to give you guys a bit of a first overview, first look at this thing from a videographer's perspective. I'm not much of a, Marquez Brownlee. I'll leave him to do all the cool stuff. He's way cooler and more techie than me. I'll leave the tech stuff to the techno music. However, this is not a phone, mate. I'm pretty sure this is just a bloody camera that looks like a phone. We've got a 1-inch sensor, probably I think this is the biggest sensor you've ever seen in a phone before. We've got a 24mm f2 and f4 lens, so you can actually change the aperture from f2 to f4 optically. We've also got that 16mm, we've also got that 50mm for them wider and tighter frames, but we only have that 1-inch sensor on that 24mm, which is basically the highlight of this phone. Now, the benefits of having a larger sensor are obviously we can suck loads more light into that sensor, so we've got a much better low light performance. We already know Sony's sensors are so good at using their high ISO ranges, and also we get a nice shallow depth of field the larger the sensor is. So in this we actually get a really nice shallow depth of field, probably the first real shallow depth of field that we've seen in a phone that actually looks decent. Now, I actually really like the cinematic mode in the iPhone 13. I definitely think there's a lot of reasons and a lot of places that it can be used, I think a lot of people are going to be using that on TikTok videos, Instagram videos, them non-professional videos, because it does look cool, and I definitely think there's a place for it. But I think a lot of the times the things that let phones down in terms of their video capabilities is just there's so much AI involved. There's so much artificial stuff going on, way over-stabilized, way too much artificial cinematic mode, shallow depth of field stuff. I think it's great, but it is so nice to finally see a phone that actually takes that shallow depth of field to a professional level where it really is a shallow depth of field. It's not just AI, it's not fake. So that is absolutely sick. Now, for those of you that absolutely love your Sony autofocus, your phase detect, real-time eye tracking, it's in a phone. What? And not only that, we've got touch object tracking on a phone. Sony, can we get that on my FX6? I'm desperate for that on my FX6. This has literally got some better autofocus features than my FX6 camera. So I said this is more of a camera than an actual phone. Well, there is a dedicated shutter button on the top of this, and it's not just a gimmick, mate. It actually feels like a shutter. You hold it down halfway, you get all your autofocus features come up. You photographers are going to be laughing. So let's go into photo. Look, right, there's your boy. Obviously, we've got that real-time, face tracking eye as well. But look, let me hold that down halfway, just like an actual shutter on a camera. It actually feels sick. I didn't think it would look and feel sick. Boom. I'll send you that photo so you lot can stick it on your walls and that. We also have a dedicated function button. So you can literally just set that function button to whatever you want. I think I would personally have it as my white balance. So I've been, just chopping and changing white balance as and when I'm out, when the sun's in, when the sun's out, especially when we're shooting that forest scene. Big up to Hannah and Oscar for doing a little bit of stand-in for me on my test shots. Speaking of test shots, 4K, 24p, 30p, 60p, 120 frames a second in 4K. We didn't even get that on the RX 100 series. We were limited to full HD to do that, 120 frames a second. So in terms of codecs, we've got H.264 and H.265, all shooting in 8-bit 420. Would have been nice to have seen that 10-bit 422, but that would have been pushing the boat out a little bit too far. In terms of the mics, we've got stereo mics on either side of the phone, and we've also got a third mic on the back to make sure that, when you're doing your face-to-face stuff, you get a nice cheeky little bit of... Actually, you know what? Let's do a little bit of a test right now, mate. Boom. Right, so this is the audio on the back of the phone, the mic that's coming out of the rear of the phone. 24mm, f2, ISO 100. Looking a bit half decent. I'm going to cut between the phone audio and my professional audio up in here. I've got a Sennheiser MKE 600 shotgun mic going straight into my FX6, but I've also got the rear one on the phone, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of how good the quality is on the back of the phone. Now, in terms of the actual ergonomics and the usage of this camera, I absolutely loved it. I was really surprised. I didn't really ever enjoy shooting on a phone, but using this as a camera was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, we haven't got a flip screen. I'm used to having a flip screen, so when I'm shooting low, I can actually see the frame. Same with above, but what do you expect? Are you going to expect a flip screen on a phone? Included with the phone, we have Video Pro, we've got full manual settings, and we also have Cinema Pro, so that we've got them more cinema-based features like our 180-degree rule and some different looks that we can add to our image. Now, there are a few little drawbacks on this thing that I wish Sony implemented. I wish that we had some picture profiles on here. Like on our Sony A7 cameras and the RX 100 series, to be fair, we had loads of different picture profiles that we could kind of pick and choose from. Now, I don't particularly want S-Log 3. We don't need to be going that flat on 8-bit colour. Something like Cine 4 would be quite nice. I know we're definitely not going to get S-Cinetone because that would have been, that would have been sick. However, it would have been quite nice to get something a little bit flatter. We definitely need a little bit more of a flatter image to play with before we go in and start tweaking a few colours, because I go a bit overboard when it comes to grading, and I don't want to be going mad on some 8-bit footage, but it would be nice to have a slightly flatter image, a little bit more dynamic range, because I was blowing out in the highlights every now and then when I was shooting out in the forest and also in town as well. So it would be nice just to see a little bit more of a flatter image to start with so that we can keep some details in our highlights and our shadows. We also have electronic image stabilization. Now, I personally am not a massive fan of image stabilization, especially digital image stabilization, because it just don't look legit. It's more of that kind of AI phony looking stuff. When I say phony, I mean phony, not phony. Especially when you're trying to keep that 180-degree rule. Whereas if you're going to have a higher shutter speed, like say you're going up 1/500 and you haven't got an ND filter on the lens, then yeah, it looks fine. It doesn't look bad at all because the image is so sharp every frame that, the stabilization actually works. You can turn the stabilization off, and that is when I really enjoy going handheld. You lot know me, I love handheld shooting, and the fact that this has got like such a quick sensor readout, I hardly got any kind of rolling shutter, any artifacts. It looks so legit. It almost looks pretty similar to my A7S, my FX6 readout. Obviously, it's not as fast as them, but for a little phone doing handheld with no image stabilization, it looks absolutely sick. It's almost like I could actually shoot like a fashion campaign or something going handheld with this particular phone. Yeah, I was massively impressed. We have an internal storage of 512 gig, and we also have a little port so that we can stick an SD card in there so we can record directly onto an SD card, offload that straight into our computer without plugging the phone in, if that's your vibe. I actually prefer recording onto an SD card because I'm just a bit old-fashioned, don't I? I'm a videographer. I don't really like plugging phones in and transfer. I'm like, give me the SD card, bosh, in, done. Now, when it comes to price, Sony definitely pushed the boat out when it comes to price. The last Xperia Pro was $2,500. That's a lot of money for a phone. But this is a camera. Still a lot of money for a camera. I could get the A7 IV for that. However, the Xperia Pro-i comes in at about £1,599. So it's definitely not outrageous, but it definitely ain't cheap. So a little bit of an overview. What did I honestly think about using this? Do I think that this could completely replace compact cameras? The answer is a massive yes. I honestly don't think I would rather use a compact camera like an RX 100 anymore over one of these. The whole reason I like compact cameras are because they're compact, because I can take them with me wherever. But when I pull out a compact camera and I start vlogging with it, yeah, people still think, oh, he's pulled out his camera. It's a bit of like a stigma. It's a bit weird. Like, I go to festivals and stuff, and I like to pull it out and share them moments with my mates and capture them, right? But I'm still pulling out a camera. Whenever I go through security, they're like, oh, you've got a camera, you're not allowed to record in here. It's like, every other person here's brung their phone in. It can all shoot 4K. Why are you singling me out? Because I've got an RX 100. Now I can just take this bad boy out and I can start shooting, and 99% of the people that would look thinking, oh, he's shooting on a camera, why is he shooting on a camera in here, are just thinking he's shooting on a phone, not even thinking about it. There's really no drawbacks to shooting on this compared to the RX 100, except that we're getting that much larger sensor on that higher end focal length, like 50mm, 70mm that we get on our zoom lens on the RX 100, and we do have that optical stabilization that we get in the RX 100 series, but we get 4K 120 in this. 4K 120, real-time phase detector, auto-focus tracking. Phones are taking over, not completely. Obviously, you know, our higher end stuff, videographers, filmmakers are always going to be using dedicated cameras, lens changes. We want to be doing that all the time. However, this has definitely got a place. I am honestly considering grabbing one of these as long as my wallet will allow, and I have a feeling it might not. Would you use this over an RX 100? Like, do you think it's there? I honestly think it is. I'll leave a link in the description for all you techie people that want to find out, you know, all the phony phone specs and that. And as always, mate, I'll be catching you lots in the next one, mate. Oh,